Okay, welcome everyone. I am Lori Allen, the Director of Programs and Communications here at the Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce. With October being Bullying Awareness and Prevention Month, we wanted to bring you a webinar on that topic. So I reached out to the Boys and Girls Club of Silicon Valley, and they were happy to collaborate with us and present this webinar titled Cultivating Mental Wellness to Combat Bullying Behavior. So I'd like to welcome our co-host and presenter, Mark Washbush. Is that right?
Correct.
Mark is the Chief Operating Officer for the Boys and Girls Club of Silicon Valley and has been a nonprofit leader in the Boys and Girls Club movement for over a decade. Mark is responsible for overseeing all organizational operations, developing, implementing, managing, and evaluating all programs, services, and strategies, ensuring organizations' sustainability and growth. So thank you, Mark, for being here with us. And Michelle is also with us. Thank you. And I will let you take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Lori, for the introduction. So with that, without further ado, we'll launch into this. We have quite a bit of content today. So usually this presentation could take at minimum 60 minutes to 90 minutes. So we're going to do the best we can to compress this into 30. So we'll do our best. We'll do our best. So let's start. So what are our lesson objectives today is that we're going to be really focusing on some priority outcomes for all of us to increase awareness around current trends related to mental illness in youth, increase our understanding of how mental illness in youth intersects with bullying, understand the basics about bullying and various cultural considerations, share strategies to cultivate mental wellness in students to combat bullying, and lastly, this is a great way to end our session, is discuss mental health implications for caregivers, such as all of you who are on this call or in this meeting, in this session, and strategies for your own wellness. So I know that everybody has been seeing statistics of late. COVID has definitely brought mental health to the fore, but I want to highlight a few things that are related to kids and their own mental health. And so these days, what we found in the last decade, this has increased, is that we have 1 in 5 kids are reporting that they have some type of mental illness. And that could be depression, anxiety. We also have, when it comes to the leading death with kids, the second leading cause of death for kids is suicide. And that's directly related to kids that have mental health issues. And these are kids between the ages of 15 and 25 years of age. And 50% of all lifetime mental illnesses actually start by the age of 14 and extend all the way through 24. And we do have some statistics that we'll share with you in a later slide. The burden of mental illness on our youth is significant. 11% of our children, ages 8 to 11, have or have had a mental illness with severe impairment. 22% of our teens have had a mental illness with severe impairment in their lifetime. And only 50% of youth with a mental health disorder receive any behavioral health treatment. So we see that 50% of all lifetime mental illness started by the age of 14. And like we'd mentioned in the previous slide, it extends to the age of 24, with 75% of lifetime mental illness starting by the age of 24. So we can see right there a real significant correlation between age and bullying and other mental health issues that lead to a lifetime of perhaps mental illness. Mental illness does not discriminate. The suicide rate for Black children ages 5 to 11 has nearly doubled in the last decade. Suicide attempts for Hispanic girls grades 9 through 12 were 40% higher than for non-Hispanic white girls in the same age group in 2017. LGBTQ plus youth report experiencing higher levels of depression than non-LGBTQ plus youth. And children of Asian American and Pacific Island descent are about as likely to experience mental health problems as the general population, but only half as likely to actually seek mental health services. There is a term that is used not only in youth development, but also in the mental health space. It's called adverse childhood experiences, otherwise known as ACE or ACEs. And so what we see here over on the left-hand side of the screen with this pyramid is that really from the very beginning, when a child is even in gestation, you'll see that the effects of historical trauma have an effect on the mother, on the stress that is occurring in her atmosphere and her world. And when a child is brought into social conditions which are also adverse, neighborhoods that could be dealing with historical trauma or low rates of employment, chronic underemployment, low performing schools, violence, you start to see the emergence of what we call these early adverse childhood experiences, which have implications for kids throughout their life into adulthood, and which then leads to disrupted neurodevelopment. So this is the stress hormone known as cortisol, increases in the brain, and there are studies to show that this has a significant effect on brain development in children that have experienced adverse childhood experiences, and then could lead to social, emotional, cognitive impairment, and then adoption of healthy risk factors such as early sexual activity, violence, and an inability to be able to regulate emotions and feelings, that executive functioning that's at the fourth part of your brain. And then this could lead then to disease, disability, social problems, and unfortunately, untimely and early death. And these also have implications, in greater sectors such as education, healthcare, our economics, our neighborhoods, and then also our society at large. It can deteriorate. These experiences, ACE can deteriorate our environments and our neighborhoods and our communities and help them to unravel. And so that's why it's such an important thing that we're talking about mental illness and the connection with bullying today. And how does this all connect? Bullying negatively impacts all youth involved, including those who are bullied, those who bully others, and those who witness bullying, known as bystanders. So it is a continuum. So rather than talk or expound about what bullying is, I'm going to let Elvis, here's a short video, he can explain in great detail what bullying is. So hopefully this all works out just fine. I'm going to hit the YouTube video and hopefully it'll play. However, I did include this in the chat, so you'll see video 1 will be a link just in case this doesn't work. So hopefully it does. So hang in there. Let's see if this works. Can everybody still see my screen? YouTube? Yeah?
Mark, is it playing on your end?
It is. Is it playing on yours?
No, it's not playing for us.
Okay, hold on 1 second. I thought this might happen. Hold on. I'm going to go to my presentation mode. Hold on. Okay, let me try this through the chat. Hold on 1 second. Technology. I should have started our agreements that technology doesn't always cooperate.
Yeah. Where would we be without technology difficulties?
All right. So it looks like we may, let me see. Hold on 1 second. Let me try one more time. I'm trying to go back to my presentation mode here. So hold on I have you on an opposite screen. So let me try this again. All right, come on, Elvis.
Fingers crossed. No, he's not playing for us still.
Still not playing? Okay, so this is my suggestion. So this is my suggestion for, can everybody see me?
Yes.
Okay, so this is my suggestion. In the, we're gonna have to watch this independently. So what I suggest under video 1 in the chat is to click on the video, says video 1, just click on there and then let's watch it independently. I am so sorry. I really wish we could watch this live stream through our video, but hopefully that we can all do that. So press play, click on the link video 1 for Elvis to talk about what is bullying, the basics.
Mark, if you want, the only other thing I can think is you can pull it up on YouTube on your screen and try to share that screen.
Okay, let me try that.
That's the only other thing.
Yeah, all right. Okay, I have mine up, so let me actually put my screen over on this side so I can actually see everybody at the same time. All right, my apologies, everybody. All right, I'm gonna share screen. Hold on. Okay. Does everybody see the YouTube video? All right. Can everybody hear Elvis? No.
We can see him, Mark, but not hear him.
Okay.
Right, maybe you need to turn the volume up on your end.
Yeah, maybe let's give that a shot. All right, I'm at 100%.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, yes.
Want me to see if I can share my screen?
Yes, could you?
Okay, let's try that.
Lori, when you're sharing your screen, make sure at the bottom there's a button that says, remember we did this with Celebrate, which way you want to share it. So you have to make sure you share it using the correct button, which will allow the audio to come through. That could be what Mark's experiencing right now.
Okay, but share it using what? I'm sorry.
I'll be right there.
Okay. All right, let's see.
Sorry, everybody.
That's okay.
Now that my blood pressure has, I'm going to be telling you at the end of the presentation, self-talk, breathing techniques, lower your blood pressure, give yourself a hug. I don't know, I'm making that one up.
Here we go. Can you see my screen?
We can.
Okay.
See if we can
Subject
hear.
on this episode
you
of
hear?
Rocket Kids.
Yes.
Bullying. We've all heard about it. We may have been a victim of bullying or seen it in action. So, we want to take a few minutes and talk about it and help you know when it may be happening. I'm Elvis, this is Rocket Kids, and let's get this started. First, I think we need to define what bullying is. So, let's begin by taking a look at conflict versus bullying. Conflict is a disagreement or argument where both sides see something or a solution differently. It can express their views and opinions with one another in a constructive way. On the other hand, bullying is a negative behavior directed by someone trying to have power and control over someone else. These are not the same thing. Conflict is part of everyday life. It's about how we interact with one another. Minor conflicts do not make others feel unsafe or threatened. Bullying is behavior with the intent to hurt, harm, or humiliate, and the person being bullied is not able to make it stop. We see the difference in conflict versus bullying? Good. This is a great start. Now, I want to give you 4 ways that people may be bullied. But before I can do so, I want to say that anyone can be bullied, and anyone can do the bullying. So, here are 4 ways people are bullied. 1, it can be physical. This one is easy to recognize. This is where someone pushes, shoves, bites, hits, or kicks someone. They intend to hurt the other person's body. It can also include taking or damaging someone else's things. It can be verbal. This one is really common because it is quick, easy, and can go unnoticed by others. This can be teasing, name-calling, threats, mean jokes, rumors, gossip, or saying things about someone else that is not true. It can be emotional. This type of bullying isn't always obvious, but it can hurt a lot. It hurts people on the inside and makes them feel bad about themselves. And finally, cyberbullying. This is when someone uses current technology, such as cell phones and computers, to bully others. It can be things like sending mean text messages, posting videos, stories, or photos meant to hurt and make fun of others. It can also be spreading rumors online. Those are 4 common ways people may be bullied. I think it's important to remember how we want to be treated and treat others that same way. Did you know that 1 in 5 students say they have been bullied? Think about how they may feel in this situation. They may be scared to go to school. They miss out on opportunities to learn. Students who are bullied may have lower self-esteem and less confidence in themselves. They are not allowed to reach their full potential, and many times, they don't know what to do or how to get help. Look, I know this is not a happy subject to talk about, but it's important. Speak with your parents and teachers about bullying, how you can recognize it, and how you can help. There are many great resources, and one we like a lot is the website Pacer Kids Against Bullying. They even have a bullying quiz to help identify bullying and what can be done about it, so go check that out. I hope this episode has been helpful, and we can learn that kindness matters, because being kind is a lot easier than being mean. So let's just be kind. How does that sound to you? Sounds pretty good to me. If you like our videos, don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow. You can also let us know your thoughts by commenting on this video. We would love to hear from you. Until next time, I'm Elvis, this is Rocket Kids, and don't forget to always be your best self.
Awesome. Thank you, Lori. So that'll be the same thing we'll do for the second video that we have a little bit later. So I appreciate that. So, Elvis put it pretty succinctly, and I appreciate that video because it basically lays it out there. But just to kind of summarize, bullying is intimidating or coercing, blackmailing, gaslighting. Gaslighting is a term that's based on a film from the 1940s, which was somebody tries to manipulate somebody else to believing that something's real when in actuality it isn't. There's verbal abuse, there's physical abuse or aggression, rumors, exclusion, hostility, and for a lot of us who are of a certain age, what has changed about bullying, the dynamic of bullying, is social media. This is something that we did not have to, and this is something I certainly didn't have to deal with when I was a kid and growing up or a teenager. But what it does is with the advent of social media, it has amplified and intensified the experiences that the kids have when they're being bullied. How often does bullying occur? Frequently, unfortunately. More than 1 in 6 high school students reported being cyberbullied in the last year. And 1 in 5 high school students reported being bullied at school in the last year. 49% of children grades 4 through 12 have been bullied at least once in the past month. 3.2 million kids have been the victim of bullying. 30% of US students are estimated to be a part of the bullying dynamic, and 70% of students have witnessed bullying. This also kind of does not indicate whether or not that which has been underreported in these statistics. We know that many kids who are victims of bullying never report it because of fear, intimidation, stigma, or they feel like nobody's going to listen to them. This kind of plays into some of the cultural considerations on what's happening in terms of bullying and then why it's underreported. 40% of students identified as lesbian, gay, or bisexual were the victims of bullying. 33% of students who were not sure of their sexual identity were bullied. 20% of students identified as heterosexual. 19% of students identified as Hispanic or Latino. 30% of students identified as female. 19% of students identified as male. 29% of students identified as white. And 18% of students identified as Black. And again, this does not indicate the level in which there has been unreporting, especially when it comes to boys. Some of the other cultural considerations, transgender teens need safe and supportive schools. And so almost 2% of high school students identify as transgender, but 27% feel unsafe at or going to or from school. 35% are bullied at school, and 35% attempt suicide. This is significantly higher than other groups. And so what safe environments can be created either at school or places like Boys and Girls Clubs or other after-school programs is we need to create and enforce an anti-bullying policy that is strong, that protects all people's identities, and identify and train supportive school staff or youth development professionals to be able to work with these kids and also perpetuate these cultural practices. COVID has really created a lot of issues for all of us, not the least of which is our kids. So some of the physical health concerns is that, when it comes to our children, maybe even you know somebody who may have had COVID. There is a new threat to our safety in terms of our health and well-being, of physical health. And we're getting conflicting information. I know people often complain about conflicting information when it comes to the pandemic, who to believe, what to believe, and there is misinformation and disinformation out there. And sometimes vaccine status for youth. At this point, we can only have kids that are 12 and up. So we have a subgroup of kids that have not yet been able to have the vaccine available to them. But then there's also stigma around those that don't vaccine and then those who do. And so when it comes to those inconsistencies and that constant changing, it really leads to kind of uncertainty, not only with adults, but especially with our kids. And there becomes inconsistent expectations and disrupted routines and canceled plans, all of which leads to anxiety and stress. Why do kids bully other kids? Well, there are developmental concerns with managing emotions. All of us who are either parents or work with kids know that kids are still learning how to deal and manage with their emotions. And so it makes it even doubly hard, maybe even stronger feelings when it comes to not only the pandemic, but imagine other life stressors, poverty, violence, family disruption, a death in the family due to COVID. So all of these play in and then put into effect a child's inability and their maturity to be able to manage those emotions in a positive way. So kids bully, in addition to being able to just not manage their emotions, they're also suffering from loneliness often. They get very self-defensive. They really don't have the skills necessary to manage conflict. They do suffer from low self-esteem. There could be a history of trauma or physical, emotional, or verbal abuse in their households. They could maybe witness this in their own households, so that's learned behavior. And they often have feelings of worthlessness and inadequacy, and often family conflict or upheaval also tends to exacerbate these feelings that the bullies have. Bullying does affect everybody involved, those who are bullied, those who do the bullying, and those who are bystanders who watch it and witness it. And so a curious thing across all of these categories is the anxiety. You'll see anxiety is common to all three of these categories. But for those of you who are bullied, there is accompanying depression, anxiety, somatic issues, so they're having difficulty sleeping. They do suffer from low self-esteem and loneliness and social isolation. They don't want to go to school, or they wake up and they say, I don't want to go to school today, I'm feeling sick. And conflict with their family and peers and other behavioral problems as well. And those who tend to bully often have problems in school. There's substance use or abuse issues happening. They have issues with regulation around aggression and frustration. They have a positive view of violence and aggression, seeing violence as aggression as a way to take control or to master their environments or a way to get what they want. They have negative views of others. There is social isolation. They struggle to follow rules. And they have an over concern with popularity. And then youth who are bystanders, they also tend to suffer from depression and anxiety as well as the other categories. They have stress-related fear of retaliation. So this is often cited by kids who witness bullying behavior is they're worried that maybe that bullying will be directed at them. So there's a level of stress that's associated with that. And then obviously a fear as well of retaliation, or maybe they will become the subject of the ire of the bully. So here's our second video. It's called Be Someone's Hero. And so I just want to pause here just for a second. Some of you who are on the session, or maybe watching it either live streamed or watching it as a recording, may have had may have been bullied themselves, been a victim of bullying, or been a bystander in the past. So I do want to warn those that that this video may be a potential trigger for you. And obviously, you know, one shouldn't shield oneself from an experience, but oftentimes we can maybe feel it's a little overwhelming. So this may be a video, may be a trigger for those of you out there. So just wanted to warn you ahead of time. So Lori, if you could again be my video sharer.
Just making sure you're up. 5 more minutes. Becca, let's go. Say cheese. Perfect.
Amanda, stop. She's done nothing to you. Get out of here. Go. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lori. I know
That's great.
my response is always palpable when I watch that video, and I want one as a parent. Obviously, I have a very strong reaction to that video. And secondly, as a youth development professional myself and somebody who works with youth, we have this natural inclination to want to protect. So it's a tough video to watch. And I think what's really important is that, sure, you know, some people may say, if only we had more kids that would step up and be a hero, right? You know, and really it can't be one. It has to be more. But, you know, it's that kind of the old adage, if not me, then who? And if not now, then when? And I think that is super important when it comes to the message of this video, is that it has to start. And so there's also something super significant about hearing and from one's peers and having one's peers stand up for others. Yes, adults are important too, of course. That's why we're here. But it's something even more significant when a peer stands up to bullying as well, and represents that hero. So,
Mark, I thought that was such a powerful video, and I think it's important as a parent or a youth leader to figure out where, if anywhere, your kid is in that scenario. Are they the one being bullied? Are they the bullied? Or the bystander? Who they are? I mean, it seems like you could be any of those. It's important to identify that early on, I would say, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. And often we find that parents are unaware of what's going on. Either one, they don't know that the child is being bullied. They're kind of squashing it, you know, they're kind of holding it inside. But obviously then that manifests in behavior, you know, often self-harming behavior, or slipping grades, or the social disconnection and the like. And for the parents that have maybe a child who is bullying, they often are surprised of what's going on. And also it tends to be bystanders also tend to not talk with their parents as well. So I think as we move forward in the presentation, we are going to be talking a little bit about how we can have some of those conversations, not only with our children, but with maybe the youth that we work with or the youth that we volunteer with. So, all right. So I'm going to get back up to our presentation. So, a second here. All right, 1 second. I'm sorry. I had to close my PowerPoint and re-log in. All right, here we go. Okay, back on track. All right, sorry. So how do we combat bullying? We do need to talk to our kids, Lori, exactly. We got to talk to them about what bullying is. And so long as we're able to define bullying ourselves and know kind of what are some of the characteristics of those that may be bullied or may be doing the bullying and those that are bystanders, we can have those conversations with our kids about their feelings, especially related to conflict and the difference between conflict, like healthy conflict, and what is bullying. And we need to encourage kids to consider other perspectives and try our best to instill in them that common ground. And that's what they need to find with others that they may be having difficulty with. We also need to teach our youth about self-control and emotion regulation. We can also have a tactic of ignoring bullies' antics. We know that often this doesn't work, but it's a tactic that should always be tried. There's also, when it comes to kids that are being bullied, they do need to set boundaries in a non-emotional manner. Is exactly like this images of this young lady here, is stand up for yourself and encourage your children to also, if they're not being bullied themselves or they're not telling you they are, also encourage them, make it part of a cultural practice of your own home, is that you stand up for other people too, that don't be a bystander. When you see another child being intimidated or bullied by other kids, have them stand up, and there is strength in numbers. So this buddy system is super important. Often friends, close friends with each other got each other's back, right? And so it's important to not only just have your friends back, but also have your larger kind of school network community also have their backs as well. It's super important, and it's part of that buddy system. And oftentimes you'll see in schools or a Boys and Girls Club where our older kids will mentor or befriend younger kids and serve as their buddy, and especially when it comes to some of the experiences younger kids have in being in an environment where there's older kids. There is anxiety, but then also fear that they'll be picked on, and sometimes that is true, but it's helpful to have some of those older kids mentor those younger kids and serve as a buddy. And so also contact the bully's caregivers. So this goes for schools, after school programs such as those, volunteers. And like I'd mentioned before to you, Lori, in this conversation, was oftentimes parents or caregivers are unaware that anything is happening. Engage the school. So this is kind of a systematic or a systemic approach to reach out to the school, because often the bullying is happening in school. On the way to and from school or in school, and often conflict and bullying behaviors can take place not only on the campus, but then they find their way to an after-school program or on the streets as they're going home. And then lastly is to contact the police if necessary. And sometimes that is definitely warranted when there is serious risk to the health and well-being of children. The police definitely should be involved, and early too, when the behavior is getting out of hand and escalating. Trust your instincts, basically. Stigma. Often our kids feel this when they're talking about bullying, and they do become a little introverted and they don't want to share some of these experiences. But oftentimes adults feel there's a stigma around it because maybe you've experienced some of this bullying trauma yourself. So starting a conversation about mental health can be difficult, but it is imperative that you do. Kids don't always volunteer information. Help set the stage for future talks. Having just some introductory conversations, building on that trust, kind of just asking a few questions. If they're not volunteering information and they seem to be exasperated with you pushing in further, back away. You can have that conversation later, but do revisit it. And having these conversations, building that trust, also helps to exercise and strengthen your emotional language, which is going to be so important if your child or if the kids that you work with do share with you that they're being bullied, or if they see a child being bullied. And back to stigma, as caregivers, as youth development workers, or as teachers, what are some of these potential barriers? These are some of the things that may be part of your self-talk. You can say to yourself, it can get scary, and I don't know if I can handle it. Yes, it can. I don't know where to start. I'm not a mental health expert. I don't know how to have these conversations or guide these children through what they're dealing with. I'm not an expert. Or most of my students, or those that I volunteer with, or kids that I work with, they don't have these problems. Maybe you're kind of blissfully ignorant or putting your head in the sand. Or you may say, my students or those that I volunteer with are too young for these conversations. Or I've got my hands full with lesson plans and classroom management and all the rest of the stuff. I just don't have time. So these are some of the things that we tell ourselves when it comes to these conversations about bullying. So we're not asking you to be a clinician, right? As a caring adult, a caregiver, or a youth worker or youth volunteer, we're not asking you to psychoanalyze anybody. So what mental health is in terms of our space and what we have control over and what it is not. It's not asking kids or students for private information. It's not searching for mental health diagnoses or symptoms. Something only a mental health provider can do, and it certainly is not time consuming. It is not that. None of these things. So there's an activity, and I know Lori is going to be sending out this activity. So this is something that you can implement with the students that you work with or the youth that you work with. It's just a simple worksheet, and it's just talking about what we can do to stop bullying. And it's a little coloring page. So just you color the hand and the sleeve, and then you write down your name. It's like a pledge. And when you see someone being bullied, we can, and then the student or youth can name a behavior that they're going to commit to when it comes to bullying, when they see it happening. So just a simple activity that can jumpstart further conversations. So fostering resiliency. So kind of returning back to ACE, adverse childhood experiences include bullying, household instability, abuse, or neglect. But we do have protective factors that are available and at our disposal. You as caring adults, or you as youth volunteers or youth workers, are that part of that network of protective agents, right? And so what helps kids get through these difficult and challenging times, especially if they're the victims of bullying or bystanders in bullying, is that access to care is fundamental. We have to have access to mental health care. Coping skills. Kids need to be exposed and be around adults that model coping behavior when it comes to emotionally stressful times. But they also have to be able to have conversations with adults, with their peers, productively. They have to have positive relationships. This is where adults and peers become essential to those protective factors. And then last is, not exhaustive list, is safe and a stable housing or school environment, by extension of Boys and Girls Clubs ourselves. And so when it comes to resiliency, which is a term that we use often at Boys and Girls Clubs, and this is really that part of that protective factor in terms of emotional well-being, and the ability to adapt well in the face of adversity is related to this idea of resiliency. And so whether that comes from a tragedy, whether that's in the community or family, it's a trauma or threats to safety, that builds that resiliency. But we also need those protective factors of adults and other caring communities in order to uplift these kids. But what resiliency is not, it's not avoidance of negative emotions or distress. That's a natural part of life. So how can we start to do some of this work? How can we be an advocate for those that are being bullied, for those that are bystanders, but then also work with those kids that are bullying others? Is we have to form new habits. And so this is kind of a prescription, I guess, for environments such as a classroom or an after-school program. So this is kind of advice for those people in the audience is reminders, is that you need to make new habits visual. So this could be a checklist or a calendar. It could be agreements that kids put together themselves saying, this is how we're going to treat each other. And then if we violate our agreements, then what are the consequences? So this could easily be put into a classroom environment. And it's a great way that caregivers can give a subtle reminder or not so subtle reminder to the agreements that are made and the consequences of our behaviors if we violate those classroom agreements. A second is you have to make things routine. Make sure kids know specifically what they're expected to do in a given classroom. And they have to practice this together. So these are part of that, those facilitated conversations around mental well-being and health and safety and bullying. And also you have to navigate the developmental stage of kids, obviously. So younger kids, you have to, like the activity with the sleeve, that's geared towards a younger group. Of course, it also stands to reason that we can give it to adults or high schoolers as well, but also know what your kids are capable of processing, but don't underestimate them. And third is reward, is take every moment to celebrate and to highlight both privately and publicly, broadcast it around the world, if you will, about the great behavior that you see from some of the kids, especially when they're doing outstanding, especially if you see kids standing up for other bullies or demonstrating like great human compassion for one another. Don't let that go uncelebrated. It builds that culture of care. This part is going to be about caregiver support and mental wellness. So we're kind of shifting a little bit of gears. So basically the theory here is that in order to be your best self and to show up for anything that you do, whether you're volunteering or working, you really also need to take care of yourself. So this is a prescription for you all out there to take care of yourself. Self-care, then you can care for others. And so anxiety. definitely during the pandemic, all of us were feeling heightened levels of anxiety, but correctly identifying what anxiety is from just common stress. So anxiety is a feeling of uneasiness, nervousness, and worried, and usually about an event with an uncertain outcome. The emotional physiological effects include fast heartbeat, you get the sweaty palms, racing thoughts, and rapid breathing, butterfly in the stomach. And then the impact on your sympathetic nervous system makes energy available when needed, like this, the fight or flight response, that you're always ready, and then sometimes you can overreact. Obviously, that the stress and anxiety of our current situation can be toxic at times, and that has a dramatic effect on our minds and our bodies. And so anxiety can lead to non-essential systems shutting down. So then you are a physical wreck. One thing we need to do is that anxiety is a normal part of life. And it's important to talk about your anxiety with your extended social network. And that because everybody does experience anxiety. And though it has been about, in terms of what's built into our DNA, this idea of the self-preservation, right, of course, it keeps us alive. But too much of it is toxic. And anxiety is a natural response to perceived threats, and it does occur on a spectrum. So there's levels of anxiety, right? But everybody should know that anxiety is normal, and there should be no stigma in terms of you being able to express the anxiety that you may feel. Change fatigue. So this is certainly the case now with the pandemic. Things are constantly changing all the time. And so if you kind of could imagine an analogy with, a computer system, your disk is almost full, save space by optimizing storage, right? It's just, there's too much change for my brain to process. Well, you're right. Your brain can't process too much change. So what can you do? Well, powers of habits and routines. You got to create a routine for yourself, got to create a habit for yourself. So then it could free up some of that disk space in your computer of a brain, right? And so habits and routines do govern much of the non-conscious decisions we make each day. It helps to reduce our cognitive load on our brains and helps reduce that decision fatigue. So optimize your brain by just getting into a habit and routine. And so you'll then be able to handle change more effectively. And how do you manage change? Is expect it, if there's one thing we know is change is inevitable, so expect it. 2 is step back and see the reality. Oftentimes we can't step away from what we're seeing, and when we don't have that distance, we can't see clearly. We have to ask ourselves, whether this change is long-term or short-term. Obviously, then that changes our behaviors and the way we perceive some of the outcomes. Adjust your environment. I know right now what's popular is feng shui. And so create an environment which has, things that are living, like plants and other things. Rearrange your furniture for optimal travel distances, maybe even your office environment. Get a stand-up desk. 5 is to form a new habit if needed, self-explanatory. And 6 is increase self-care. I think all of us on this call could definitely benefit from more self-care. I'm sure we don't give enough of it to ourselves. So common coping skills when we're dealing with change, stress, anxiety, and all the rest of this. For instance, you're doing a presentation like today, is preparation and rehearsal can really help reduce stress in the unknown, which causes anxiety. And it also allows you to master something ahead of time. And then it can be gradual, obviously, but paired with relaxation, you can really kind of power through some of that anxiety that is usually associated when you haven't prepared or rehearsed, say a presentation or even a talk with one of your kids about bullying or something that's on your mind or changes a behavior that you may have witnessed. And so relaxation, what are the benefits? It impacts your sympathetic nervous system. It reduces physical symptoms. It allows our brain to refocus. And there's some stuff that you can use, there's apps and other things like Headspace, Calm, Breathe to Relax. So these are some of the resources that are available to, if you can't quite get to a place where you're able to do some mindfulness or 5 minutes of meditation on your own, there's apps out there that can help you with that. Sometimes we need an app just to remind us, hey, take 5 minutes to focus on your breathing and clear your thoughts. And emotional intelligence. all of us should be striving towards this. So, how do we learn to handle big emotions that we have? Well, being able to identify, express, and manage our emotions, and to use these skills to help with relationships. It's important for both personal and professional success, right? It's the way we have to navigate our office spaces, and the way we navigate life is through emotional intelligence. And it's also skills that can be practiced, honed, strengthened, and used more consistently, but it does require us to practice it, right? It requires repetition. It's just not wave a magic wand and we're obviously all of a sudden emotionally intelligent. It does take a roadmap, and then it also takes practice. And anyone at any age can benefit. So there's mindfulness, there's apps, which I alluded to previously. There's psychotherapy if it's getting too overwhelming. And then there's also self-help books as well that people find very, very relevant to developing their social and emotional intelligence. So here's some just examples of some self-care, which are important. I'm sure some of you do this already, or some say, I got to do more of that. Journaling, getting out into your garden, doing some work, connecting with your kids, breathing, focusing on yourself, talking with friends, walking the dog. I know a lot of us started walking when the pandemic began. I don't know how many of you are still walking, but maybe it's time to start walking again. I know I've kind of fallen away from that. Exercise, like really getting a good sweat on, reading or listening to music or a podcast, getting away from social media, getting on a bike, doing yoga. All of them are great things. And I'm sure maybe even some of, obviously, there's other self-care practices that you probably are doing right now. They're not represented on the screen. So 10 ways to show yourself love. So what fills your heart? And not only is this for yourself, but also this is something that you can kind of encourage others to do for themselves as well. So list out reasons why you are awesome, because you are awesome, right? We tell the kids all of this all the time. They're incredible. Young people are amazing, wonderful human beings, and we need to cultivate their awesomeness, right? You are awesome too. Set a goal for yourself. There's nothing better than setting a goal and actually achieving it, right? Or if you fall short, still pat yourself on the back that you set a goal for yourself, and at least you attempted it. Forgive yourself, right? Find something that makes you feel confident. Create a mantra. That could be, mantras are often used when it comes to meditation. It's just something you tell yourself over again, or it could be a principle that you live by. Remind yourself that you are worth it because you are. Treat yourself. I know people who are really into exercise, they get really anxious about, having a scoop of ice cream. You should. You've earned it. Create your own toolkit for harder days. We're all going to have terrible days, right? Or we're going to have not so great days. Well, what's going to be the toolkit, or what's going to be in your toolbox that you're going to pull on when the days get kind of hard, right? Where you suffer from a little bit of self-doubt or your confidence is getting shaken. Schedule downtime. Super important. That could be sometimes, mindless TV can be very therapeutic, right? Be a little selfish. You should. I think oftentimes when people get overly stressed or anxious, or depressed, it's because they're not giving themselves enough time for themselves. And you're not being selfish. It's important for your mental health and well-being. And obviously set really good boundaries. When you're giving, and you're allowing people to kind of take, it could really lead to devastating consequences. So I love this little cartoon here. So I need a break. Well, take one. By golly, you should take one. Take a break. You deserve it. So you need to advocate for yourself. Not only does this come to when you're talking with your doctor or another clinician, you need to advocate for yourself, but it's advocacy for yourself in every walk of life. Figure out what you need. Let people know how to help, and take breaks. And also, in order to be a person connected with the broader world, is you also need to advocate for others. This is so important, obviously, for when it comes to our topic today and bullying, but you do need to stand up for others. Ask other people how they're doing. So inquire about who they are. Sometimes people are just dying to say something, but nobody's asking. Or maybe they don't want to burden anybody with their own thoughts or the problems that are going on in their life. And it's almost like permission to talk when somebody asks you, what's going on with you? Are you okay? And you'd be amazed that people will open up, even if sometimes with some stuff that's really going on that's really, they can't quite figure out, and then spend more time listening. That is such an important tactic. for advocating for others is the simple act of listening sometimes can be truly liberating for other people. And it's a great gift you can give to others. And kindness does go a long way. Also, some organizational response is, same kind of the nature of the self-care and being advocate, not only for yourself or others, but also extends to the workplace too, is how can we have an organizational response is be proactive to the needs of your team. Identify individual and organizational symptoms. If there's issues that you're feeling across your network or within your business or parts of your business, be empathetic to it. Be aware of it. Right. Provide resources for your staff to be able to get through it, and provide permission to practice self-care. We spend a third of our life in our places of business, our work, and it should not be an environment that excludes self-care as well. So here are some silver linings. I know we're running up on our time. It's far more than 30 minutes. But ask yourself this thing, and I know we don't necessarily have an opportunity for us to interact, but silver linings can't always be found. Sometimes you do have to paint some silver paint and brush them on your own. So I want you, when you step away from the session, is really ask yourself, what's the silver lining for myself today, right now? So give yourself permission to think about that and embrace the wonders of your own life. Sometimes we can get muddled down in the day-to-day drag that we don't tend to recognize the silver linings that are out there and are always out there. And lastly, it's thank you for what you do. Whether or not if you are a student and what you do is being a student and being a friend and being a son or a daughter, keep doing what you're doing. Right? If you're a youth development worker, keep doing what you're doing. A teacher, a volunteer, or somebody just out there that's just has compassion and empathy for the broader world, just put it good out into the world. It'll come back to you. So keep doing what you're doing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate you taking the time today to have this webinar with me. It was wonderful. I wanted to say I went to that with the hashtag on the young lady's arm, the hashtag on our sleeves.
On our sleeves.
And it was amazing. It has so much more in-depth information too. It touches on everything you said today, but then kind of does a little bit deeper dive where you can kind of experience that and get some information there. So I think that's a great resource for everybody to go to. It's hashtag on our sleeves. It's on the young lady's arm. So you'll see it there. I'm not sure if we had an issue with the link maybe today. I'm not sure, about why nobody's in here, but if anybody has questions after watching this on the video, please reach out to myself, either Lori at morganhillchamber.org, and I will put you in touch with Mark and we'll get the resources connected to you. But we really appreciate everybody's time. And Mark and Michelle, thank you so much for coming. And it was a great webinar. Thank you for the information.
Thank you very much.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark and Michelle.